A few players have been in talking about a ground and pound approach that maybe could describe the offense this year. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I still don't think that. I think philosophically it changes week to week, game plan to game plan. It's obviously something over the last 3 years we haven't run the ball the way that we need to. So there's definitely been an emphasis on it more in practice. And I think that anytime you emphasize something, you got to practice it, or just it's words. And if you're going to talk about something, it needs to be more than words. So it's more about us improving a weakness versus like a philosophical change.
What did you guys see from Lenore's over these last few weeks that led Coach Beamer to making the announcement yesterday he's going to start?
I think it started when he got here on campus. We've had now over a year of body of work with him, and we named him the starter going into fall camp because we thought we needed to establish some leadership and allow him to kind of take a different when you're in a competition, sometimes you're more focused on doing your job versus being the actual leader. So needed to go through camp and continue to keep the competition open, even though we did tell Lenore you're in the pole position, and just the consistency, getting better every day. We're not where we need to be right now, and he's a young player with a lot of young players around him, but he definitely proved at this moment he's the right guy for the job and the best guy for the job.
With this wide receiver room, how much separation have you seen with any of those guys? Is there anything you've maybe noticed about this group compared to going into camp?
I think that they've all kind of starting to figure out who they are in the offense, trying to learn it a little bit better. There's still ongoing competition. I think that because of how the room is made up, it will continue to go on. We've got some guys that have different skill set and different body types and different sizes, but it will be almost the competition is still open. It is still going. And now, to be completely honest, no one's separated themselves from the pack. We have some guys that have been here for 6 weeks that have taken big jumps right now, but it's going to be probably by committee more so than last year, and we're looking forward to these guys improving each week.
Hey, Dowell, from your perspective, what's the main difference you've noticed with the way the offensive line has looked so far in fall camp compared to when you were here last year?
Well, it's completely different. This time last year compared to like the first series of the North Carolina game last year. I think that the overall philosophy of the program has helped because we've been able to stay healthy, and there have been a lot of changes that way, from the way Coach Beamer's run the schedules to the way the strength staff does things, the more modalities and recovery things that we've done with these guys and the options that are available to them. We did make that an important part of the off season and training camp, just to get to this point where we're healthy and we're ready to go. So we're still continuing to work on that, but I think it's a group that has got some new faces, and there's some young faces in there. But Rashawn and Kaysen have been here for a while, even though Kaysen has not been able to have the career he's wanted to this point because due to injuries and circumstances he couldn't control. But you still got a little bit of veteran leadership with a bunch of new guys and a bunch of young guys. And I think it's different in the fact that there's some guys there's competition, and there's some some young players that are doing everything they can to play early.
With that tight end group, you obviously have some older guys, but with Michael Smith, how has he been able to come in and assert himself as a guy who's going to be, a contributor for y'all?
Yeah, we got Brady Hunt from Ball State, came in as an extremely intelligent player, played in a pro-style offense, which definitely helps when he was a Ball State transfer in here. And then Josh Simon played for us last year, and obviously we know his skill set very well. And there were some things he needed to continue to work on as far as blocking and pass protection to take over for the role that Trey Knox had last year, who's now the Minnesota Vikings. But then you got a young, talented player like Michael Smith that's, we're trying to figure out, hey, exactly how much he can handle, what his best role is going forward in that rotation with those three guys. But we're pleased with where he's at this point. And just a little story to tell you about the type kid he is. Like 9:45 the other night, and I'm sitting in Shula's office with Blackwell, and I think Coach Furry was in there, and we hear chatter down the hall, and I'm like, who is that? Like, it's 9:45, and it was one of those nights that the players got out a little bit earlier, and I walked down the tight end room, and Mike Smith's sitting in there with Dante Reno, and he's got the clicker like this. He's in there watching tape and watching all his reps, and I walked back down the hall and told those guys, I said, hey, come in here, I want to show you a route, and we're talking to show them some pro tapes on some routes and stuff. But when football is important to these guys, and they're smart, tough, dependable, they got a chance to be good players. And I mean, for a rookie or freshman to be sitting in there just watching tape, just two of these guys just going back through practice, tells you how important football is to those guys.
You coached him before his injury at Arkansas, and you're coaching him now. Does Rocket Sanders look close to one you remember from Arkansas?
Yeah, unbelievable offseason for him. Came in, got too heavy at Arkansas with 242, and they asked him to, and he did what he was asked to do. But the player I knew at 228, 225, 228 was explosive, catches the ball well, extremely prideful, extremely detailed in his work. You would say, like, at a very young age, was a pro. And we had good backs at Arkansas, so the competition obviously made him better. But he's coming here and battled through some injuries when he got here, but got with Coach Morton and Coach Jamil Walker and Coach Day and that staff and Clint Haggard, our trainer, and went to work on the rehab. And if I hadn't had the year away from him, the 2 years we spent together at Arkansas, it feels and looks like that same player that's got juice, that's got size, that's a professional. That when he comes in here and goes to work every day, you say that's how you're supposed to practice. That's how you're supposed to prepare. That's how you're supposed to work in the weight room. The first guy's the first guy in every day, and he's going in there with Coach Morton, and they're doing weird stuff like bear crawls and crawling 100 yards and all these things to get his body right and get it back symmetrical. And what a commitment he's made to this program and himself to get himself back to where he needs to be to play well.
The way you talk about the tight ends, do you anticipate them having a pretty improved role in the passing game this year?
We're second in the conference last year in the passing game behind Georgia. Had a guy who was pretty good. So you talk about what Trey Knox and Josh Simon did last year is pretty dang good. And it's always something that we believed in going back to my NFL days when you got Delaney Walker but some of these guys like Jared Cook that we've coached in the past, I think it is important. I think that the really good teams can control the middle of the field, and you do that with your running backs, your tight ends, controlling the middle of the field. People want to try to play middle field open and those things. Like you have to be able to cover in between those divides, and handle that and let the wide receivers control the outside half. So it's always going to be a position of importance to us, and they always change now. Trey was a different guy than Josh is, and Josh and Brady are completely different. So the role changes, but the importance of the role is very important and will always be here as long as I'm here.
Two things for you real quick. Is Amari Huggins-Bruce still with the team?
Coach Beamer will handle all roster questions.
All right. And how you said the wide receiver room is competition is ongoing. How do you go about determining who gets that start opening game? Do you look at matchups, or do you just kind of go based on what you're seeing out there?
The beauty of it is the players always control the depth chart with how they play. And when you press play on that clicker and it's on these big screens right here, they determine who plays, not us. So it's about those guys continuing to improve and separating themselves from the group.
You talked about this wide receiver room kind of being by a committee sort of thing. I know last year you guys had Xavier Legette, who was the main target and whatnot, but with the change of pace this year and having more guys that haven't really been able to separate themselves so far, what can that do for the offense this year?
Yeah, well, hopefully it creates balance. Last year AB was a good player. He's playing for the Cleveland Browns right now. There was another receiver here that transferred to Ole Miss that was a good player. And obviously we have a first-round talent in Xavier Legette, who was a difference maker. You might not see one of those again for 10 years with the way that guy worked and played when it mattered the most on Saturdays, and the way he worked and the legacy and standard he created in this program. So you're not ever going to replace that guy. So it's more like Moneyball. You're trying to figure out, like, hey, which 3 to 4 to 6 guys can replace the production he had, and is there different ways to replace that production? Does Rocket Sanders and Juju play into that? Do these tight ends that we just talked about play into that? So it's spreading out. Balance is creating. It's not run pass. It's different skill guys touching the ball and being productive that way. And I don't think we had very good balance last year outside of Knox and Legette. Like, we need to improve that, and so that we're counting on some of those guys, and we'll do it in a different way. Obviously, this year, no one's going to come in and replace X and what he did.
With Shula and Coach Elliott, and I guess Blackwell with his experience sitting in your chair before, how collaborative is it within the offensive staff room?
It's collaborative for sure, and it was last year as well. You bring in different guys with different perspectives, but the best position coaches, and I always took pride in this as being a position coach myself, is like your job is to make the coordinator's job easier, the head coach's job easier. It's being able to coach your guys in the details of the plays. And sometimes it's not always about the scheme, but it's how we coach the scheme and how we utilize our players' skills. So that those guys, when you're able to focus on different things outside of a guy being able to control his room and handle his rotation and then give input when needed and when asked for. Like, those things definitely help. And when you have guys that can manage their rooms well, and you don't have to worry about that, you don't have to worry about distractions and off the field problems, and because they're policed well. And the really good position coaches set a standard of discipline where there is no punishment because everyone knows the expectation. And I think that's what those guys, Coach Elliott, Coach Blackwell, and Coach Furry, have been able to help us establish, is a little bit more consistency and a little bit more discipline, and raising the standard of how you go about your business as well.
Dowell, kind of a two-parter. How many running backs do you want to take with you on a travel roster game like for the SEC? And where would Matthew Fuller kind of fit in that mix?
Yeah, those are definitely great questions for Coach Beamer. Matthew has developed the nickname of Meatloaf. I don't know if you guys have heard that yet, but it's a fun fact. I am extremely pleased with where he's at physically. It's hard on these freshmen to play. And it's really, really hard as a freshman to come in here and play, because you're not talking about, we don't run – I wouldn't say we're a college offense. I mean, we're a team that's going to have multiple protections and NFL protections, and there's going to be multiple ones. And so you got to come in here and figure out what these guys can do early. Obviously, Coach Beamer will control how many guys we take. It's always the same thing about balance. Like, you'd love to have a running back room where there's 3 or 4 guys in rotation and playing, and I don't think that Rocket ever came here with the, like, hey, I don't want 40 carries a game either, because now you're just taking another beating on your body, but he's going to do whatever it takes to help this football team win. So you do need balance that way, and that is important. I don't know that. I hear the players say it, and so I call him that as well. He responds to it, so.
Have you ever seen Lenore Sellers flustered?
Oh, yeah. I should come to the QB room last night. I threw him out of practice multiple times. Like, it's the intensity that these guys get coached with at that position is probably different than what they've experienced. And, you know, it was easy for Spence, and it was easy for Lenore, you know, to watch Spence and do this. But we played Mississippi State last year, and Spencer, I don't know what he was. He had like 3, 4, 5 incompletions for the game, and throws the ball, whatever it was, 40, 50 times. And then we go to Sunday practice, and we give the young guys 2 minutes. He throws an interception, and I mean, rip his head off about, like, hey, Rattler just threw the ball 50 times in a game and didn't turn it over once. And you get one throw in the first throw, you throw a pick. But you got a battlefield hard in these guys. So when they get in these big stadiums, these arenas in the SEC, that they're ready to handle the burden, because it's a heavy burden to wear the crown of being the quarterback in the SEC. Outside that, being the head coach, and then the quarterback, obviously, like, they take it just takes a lot, and it takes mental toughness, and you're gonna have to go through it. So that's the way we coach him. So yes, I've seen him flustered. He bounces back extremely fast, and he is resilient that way, and he perseveres the right way, and he can take one mistake, and normally he doesn't make the same mistake twice, and that's probably what helps him. Also, the question earlier, like, what's helped give us confidence to be able to put him in that spot is being a redshirt freshman, because the backups played a lot in the SEC and done some really good things. You go turn on that Alabama game like 2 years ago, and Robbie's electric. But the ability to we know there's going to be lumps, and we know he's going to take some of those things on the chin, but I have a ton of faith in him to continue to make new mistakes and continue to get better, and he is ready from that part of it mentally. And he got to play a little bit last year. You know, he goes to the Furman, plays a little bit of Furman, got to play a little package of Kentucky, and then plays against Vanderbilt. So he's played in these venues a little bit, but you know, what an awesome opportunity for a young guy, and to get to do it at a really early age.
You alluded to Robbie a second ago. I'm just curious, does he look any different as a passer in a good way now compared to maybe what was on tape last year? Because I think he talked in the past about how he's playing through like a little bit of a shoulder situation.
Yeah, I'm pleased with where he's at. I'm sorry to answer the question the way I am on that one. It's a little bit choppy question. I'm going to judge you right now. Y'all judge me. I'm judging you on the question. But I do think it is an area that is becoming more of a passer, not thrower, has been a part of his growth and developing the rhythm of each throw and the body. You know, we talk about the R&Bs as a quarterback and its rhythm and its bass and its body position and his balance. Like those are the things that make you accurate. So we've continued to work with him on that stuff. There's areas he needs to improve. He has improved in some of that stuff, and there's still areas of improvement for him. But you can't put a value on experience. And he's played in these big games. He's played in Iron Bowls, and he's done those things. So to have him in the room and to have a guy that's willing to help a redshirt freshman that's about to go start and in the middle of a competition speaks to his character a little bit. And it wasn't easy. It's not easy for him to sit back and say, hey, that guy's the starter, and I've gotten established. I've played a lot in this conference and done some really good things in this conference. But the unselfishness that Spencer, Lenoris, Luke Doty, Tanner Bailey created in that room is something that we'll always, as long as we're here, we will continue to preach of. Like, we're pulling for each other and we're pulling the right way. Once we name a starter, it's all about helping whoever that is on the field be the best version of himself, and he's embraced that.
Yesterday, Coach Beamer talked about how tough week one games are, just especially with a young group, obviously, rookie mistakes, jitters, so be it. So I'm curious, do your expectations change at all? You talked about holding, especially Lenoris, to a high standard, or do you coach them as if it's week 5 or 6?
Yeah, the week one, there's things that happen, unexpected looks. There's no tape. There's transfer portal, so you don't know everyone. You don't know what their roster looks like. You don't know where they've changed philosophically. You have to be prepared for unscouted looks. It can also be very challenging for young players because you prepare for what's on tape. And you go back there and you say, hey, what gave us problems this year that they could take from last year and put that on tape? So and then you try to work all that, and you got to be careful because you got young players playing and they don't have the experiences that Spencer and Leggett and Trey Knox had, and DK, AB, all those guys that played a long time. So you coach it like every game is the first game of the season. Every game is a championship game. Like I went on a little rant in the QB room today about the expectations of today's practice getting ready for this game coming up, because it will be the biggest game of the season that week. So the intensity of our practices and our reps better match the expectations of how we expect to play on Saturdays. What's the STU?
Texas State.
That's what I thought, Fighting Armadillos. Yeah, Paul Blake.
Good one.
Yeah.
Great movie.
Yeah, great movie.
Are you keeping this for the season? You made a decision on
I
that?
don't know. I'm thinking about. I was going to ask y'all what y'all think. Maybe take a poll. I don't know. My wife likes it, but there's gray in it, so I'm a little self-conscious about that. Yeah, I know. It's wisdom or losses. I don't know what it coaches. Yeah, I don't know. Right now, yes.
Tua made some headlines this week about head coaches and being coached, and how he responds. How hard is that to balance? You talked about some of your interactions with Lenoris. How hard is that to balance and figure out how to make each player tick?
That's it. That's the art of coaching. Because I did see that with Tua and Coach Flores. I also sent the balance of stuff. You try to educate people. I also sent this clip on Twitter I saw about Tom Brady talking about being coached really hard. And one thing I learned from Coach Parcells when it was our first year in coaching, I left playing at Arkansas, went to the Dallas Cowboys, and I'm watching Bill Parcells coach this young quarterback. We had Drew Bledsoe and Drew Henson was supposed to be the heir apparent, 6'4", looked apart, sling it, New York Yankees. And this quarterback, there was a 3, and Bill used to ride. Coach Parcells used to ride him. His name was Tony Romo. All right, no one knew who he was in the moment. And I just watched him grind him and ride him. But then then all of a sudden you give him a little compliment. And it's like that compliment, once you establish the expectation, goes a long way. And I never want our players to have – I want their expectations for themselves to be higher than I have of them. And as long as it is, then I can continue to coach them hard. If you have really good relationships and honest, open relationships with, like, Lenoris, which he and I do because we've been together and I recruited him, I can say anything to him and he can say anything to me, literally, and he knows where I'm coming from and I know where he's coming from. So the conversation is always clean. It's pure. Football's pure. Sometimes I'm talking to number 16, not Lenoris. On the field, I'm talking number 16, not Lenoris. In the meeting room, but then after that stuff breaks, there's also a time when the relationships take over. And it is our job to find out what buttons to push. And everyone's different. Spencer was different than Lenoris. Matt Hasselback was different than Jay Cutler. With Jay Cutler, I had to go stroke, spank, stroke. Before I said anything negative, I had to say something positive, like, hey, like that was a really good throw on 3rd down, but on the 2nd down, don't forget the flipper call. And instead of, like, if I came at him and just right off the bat said, hey, you can't throw the ball there in cover 2, and then I'm going to get explicit lyrics back at me. So it's like you handle each person differently. That's part of building relationships. And then when you have these really like fireproof relationships where the truth and honesty always comes out and it's pure and everyone knows where each other's coming from, you can coach them as hard as you want at that point. And I expect them to give me feedback. I don't expect them to just put their head down. And I like it when they bite back at me a little bit. And I try to make them a little surly so they do bite back at me, because then all of a sudden it's like ownership. And I feel like right when they do that, it's like, I got him. When Lenore's cuts his eyes at me, cuts those goggles at me, and I can see the look in his eyes, and he's pissed at me,